how important is it to integrate SIAM into ITSM processes? And what are some of the methods for this integration?
Absolutely. I think it needs to be integrated into ITSM processes. In terms of documenting the processes, I've involved them as a combined set of processes so have separate SIAM procedures, but for the ITSM processes, integrate them through swim lanes and have joint training on those processes with all parties involved.
It's like asking how important is it to integrate the gears into the transmission? Incredibly, because the idea is that they're designed to work, the hope is that they're designed to work together. And in terms of integrate them, I'll follow Helen's lead there and talk about using the races and who does what, because typically you'll have a process that works. And then it's just a case of looking at the responsibilities, the accountabilities, and so on, in light of the fact that all of a sudden, rather than having a customer supplier relationship, you will have a service integrator in between. So if you've got a process that works, use it. But what I would say is be very careful that you don't make the assumption that SIAM will suddenly mean that processes that weren't mature are suddenly going to become mature overnight as if by magic, and the SIAM fairy comes along and sprinkles the dust on the process.
Yeah. I normally bring out the SIAM silver bullet. That doesn't exist. I want to nuance that a little bit further, Sanjay, because I think ITSM processes are a documented series of activities that generates an output for a team. And in the ideal world, all providers would use the same process, but we don't live in the ideal world. So what you're going to find is that kind of each provider has to create their own process and then integrate it to create a SIAM process. So incident management is a good example. Provider one might use a different tool than provider two, but they both have to work together on certain incidents. I'm not even talking about major incidents, but it could be other incidents as well. So the ITSM processes stay what they are already. Everyone has to create a process, and you can use your iTool, version 3, or use COBIT processes or whatever in there. SIAM then adds that integration layer, and within the SIAM theory, we call that a process model. But I actually find also the ITIL 4 definition of a practice really useful, where we basically have one practice, incident management as an example, that allows each provider, if they want, to create a slightly different process. Another thing that is very important in the SIAM theory is the common data dictionary, so that everyone knows what a priority 2 actually means. Because what can happen is, if you have a priority 2 in an organization and it goes to a service provider, it's a priority 3 for them, because they're a big global service provider and blah, blah, blah. But if they then bounce it to another provider as a priority 3, you've lost that bit of information in there. So the common data dictionary is another technique or a method that SIAM describes, together with the process model / practice, that allows you to link individual processes. So the processes are as important as they always were, but that linking is the key.
I think it's probably important there, Simon, I'd add to that and say, where you can, if you tier your providers, whether they're internal or external, because it's typical that you'll tier suppliers, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, depending whether they're strategic, tactical, operational, commodity, whatever. But tiering your providers, so that if you've got internal teams that are service providers as well, tiering them and trying to get as many of the important ones, the tier ones, to be using your tool in some way, or using the tool in some way, to try and alleviate some of this idea of things. You will always get things being dealt with in different tools, but if you can, the more you can alleviate that, the more that you can mitigate that, the easier it becomes. So where possible, trying to get people to use the same tools. We don't have that sort of priority matrix. So it's a priority 2 for them. So it's a 3 for us. It's an alpha omega for them, which means it's a priority 0 for these guys. No, you don't really want to be doing that. That adds a level of complexity that nobody needs.
I agree with Barry, but also I think getting the internal resolver groups on board is a journey as well. The ways of working is something you're going to go agree overnight, even though they're in the tool. It takes a lot of effort to get them up to the same speed as a provider, and normally I do a pilot first because there's a lot of OCM involved, because it's for them probably they've been quite loose in their ways of working, targets, not having proper service reviews, etc.
Yeah, understand what the process is, which is where I said something like the ITIL 4 practices can work really good. OCM, what a fantastic comment there as well. It's always about people. Doesn't matter how good your process is or how good your tool is. If people don't know how to use them, you're not going to get any benefit out of it.
Or there's resistance because there's a whole sea change in ways of working. Yeah.
And what Barry started with mentioning the RACI, because that's such a clarity about this activity, this person, and in particular here, we're talking about the responsibility. This person is performing it. Of course, if there are two people responsible, they need to work together and hand over to the next activity. So it makes those links quite clear once you have a RACI matrix.